Community Beacon, Fridays at 6:30 EST, with your hosts Michaeldseville and Joel Simmons. A channel whose focus is liberty. A place where the lessons discussed and taught will create openings to a more open and freer mindset. A mindset where you may reach the height of your potential and excel. Here are your hosts, Mike and Joel.
Guess what help if I took that off?
That's all right. That's all right. What's going on, everybody? It's Mike and Joel back again for another Community Beacon, and we are here to discuss work and life balance. So it's going to be an absolutely magnificent show that we have going on here today. First off, like Mike would always do, we want to make sure that we take care of a couple of things. But without further ado, let me just go ahead and make sure that everybody knows Michaeldseville, the host with the most, the king of real estate right there.
Let's go.
That's it.
Go, people. Gratitude, man. Gratitude is the foundation. Being grateful. We're blessed to be here. I definitely appreciate my co-host with the most, Mr. Joel Simmons, with the Tenacity Foundation. Guys, let's get into this housekeeping, and we can get this show on the road, right? Remember to... Go ahead, brother.
That's it. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Like, share, comment, hit the notification bell. But I'm going to tell you what, we've done this show for over 2 years. The amount of value that is packed into this show, the amount of stuff that's provided, and just really, honestly, I just think it's documentation. This is just documentation, and you can see the growth in the show. So if you are at the beginning of your business career or thinking about being an entrepreneur, some people want to be an entrepreneur. Some people just want to be great people overall. Whatever it is that they're doing, you're going to find a lot of the tidbits in this show. Guys, do not go out here and just, wade in the dark trying to figure it out. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, yesterday. And one of the things is that we can tell, and this is why 90% of businesses, Black businesses specifically, close within the second year, because of we're not
18 months.
Yeah, we're not searching for this mentorship, these models to follow. We're kind of in this hustling mentality. I love the hustling mentality. I think it's needed at times. However, what we want is sustainable, profitable businesses that provide balance. So we'll get into that as well. Guys, remember on Mondays, oh man, I think I know what it takes. I'm in the wrong section. What it takes on Mondays at around 4:30. I think last week I actually dropped it off at around 6:30. I do What It Takes, which is it starts with me. I do What It Takes. So check me out on my channels, both YouTube and on Facebook. What It Takes every Monday, normally between 4 and 6. Last week was like 6:30 because, children, buses, commute, logistics, all these good things happen. But go check out that show. I think I spent a good amount of time on it since I had missed the show before. It was 9/11 actually. So yeah, definitely wanted to give my just due for that. On Wednesdays, we got It Starts With Who, brother?
Yes, sir. It starts with me. And listen, man, we're having a good time inside of the show. We got some really good ones coming up. I hope y'all like Dupe. She was amazing. That one sip of alcohol, that was definitely it was fun. It was fun listening to her story about that.
Oh, I said, ooh.
Not me. Yeah, not me. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in probably about 23 years. So it wasn't me. Yeah, it wasn't me.
But yeah, awesome, brother. Yeah, It Starts With Me. Shouts out to guys. Check the show out. I'm telling you, a lot of us are wading through the dark. We just trying to, we're throwing, what's the other thing? We throw everything up against the wall and see what sticks. There's a lot of this stuff that's going on, and this is really going to get into the topic of the day. However, check out It Starts With Me. Check out our Friday. We culminate the week Fridays with Community Beacon at 6:30. This show, the one that you're watching right now, if someone has shared it with you or you've just come across it, however you come across it. You sought us out. Maybe sometimes you didn't seek us out, but you're here now. We will give you, and you can go back on all the other shows. We're documenting exactly how to run your business. This is free coaching. I know sometimes we don't value things that are free, so maybe we need to put some stuff behind the paywall. But this is some really free coaching. So here's what most people get with free coaching. You're gonna get a lot, okay? When you get free, when people are coaching you for free, they're gonna give you a lot of information. Normally, when you get behind the paywall or you start paying for coaching, you start to get really precise in how you're going to do these different things. Now, some of you, the free coaching or the information you find on the internet, it might suffice, but that's going to take you time to weed through to see what makes sense, how it makes sense for you, and customize it on your own. Still, you're wading through the dark, but this time you might have a little rope that you're using to kind of guide you through, but it's going to take time. However, if you go seek someone who can coach you, some of us just need to start with mindset and life coaching. Some of us, we just need to understand just who we are as a person and the values. Like some of us just need to start there with just the bottom and establishing a really good foundation. Because once you start to do that, it might seem like, oh, this is elementary, but you got to start somewhere to go to the next round. So that's my spiel on coaching. You got a brother on the other side of the screen who is a life coach. So if I were you, I would definitely seek and reach out to someone who I know cares. I know who's willing to put his all into what it is that he's going to be helping you out with, who's going to sit down there and listen and take into account and customize what it is that you need as a person. So reach out to the brother on the other side of the screen and the Tenacity Foundation. They're doing some awesome things. I know he's out in the Belle Glades. I heard Belle Glades changed quite a bit. He's doing some things out there in Belle Glade and around the community. Specifically, last one we did what you did. What was it? Speak Out. Was it? What is that? What it was called? The program?
Right. Communicate Now.
Communicate Now. So, which communication is it runs the world. If you can communicate effectively, it doesn't mean that you can just get up and start talking. But honestly, to me, communication really starts with active listening, like listening to what the other person is saying before you get in there with a solution. Because what's the saying? People don't really care about what it is you have to say until you understand where it is that they're coming from. All right, let's get into it. The brother said he's going to has a couple of questions for me. We're talking about work-life balance. I'm excited. Let's see where we can go with this. Let's see what we can do, brother.
Yeah, let's do it. And then also one more shout out, to Beethoven Francois and the Male Perspective. You all check him out. Check him out on YouTube or however else is streaming. Mike is a part of that group, so you'll be able to see him in all of his glory. All right.
It's just the Lord shining down upon me. That's the glory. It's the Lord shining and speaking through me. All right, brother, what we got?
Yeah, so beautiful, man. I love the intro. It's a great segue, really, when it comes down to it from the male perspective, to this, the work-life balance. And let's go from the male's point of view, right? So, Mike, let's just start off with a couple of simple questions. Like, number one, how long have you run your own business?
Brother, I really got into entrepreneurship I would say probably late teens, 18, 19 kind of deal. When I was in college, I started, I actually started working with dogs first, and I didn't know it was a business. I didn't know it was entrepreneurship. It was just something that I liked and I was able to make money off of. But essentially it was a loosely ran business. So let's say maybe 20 years, a little under 20 years. And then I said, I was going to go and I was going to work with the government or work in my community for 5 years. It actually lasted about 10. It actually lasted about 10 years. But then I, jumped right back into entrepreneurship running businesses and actually working with businesses as well.
Okay. So while you were running this business with dogs, starting off with dogs and everything, you said it was a loosely run business that you really didn't know it was a business. What do you mean by that?
That's an awesome question, brother. Dogs were my passion. I was really into dogs at a young age. 16, 17 years old was when I started having my own dogs for my own self. So as soon as I was out of my mother's house, I decided, I said, you know what, I do like dogs. But there was always something that I was like, if I'm doing something, I have to make money doing it. Like that was my thought process. Like I got to get into it, and even till now, I get into an industry where I would like to make money doing my passion. I think that's what a lot of people often chase. You want to make money doing your passion. It's just my passion tends to make a lot more money than a lot of other people's passions. So I got into American Pit Bull Terriers. I saw how much they were making off of those dogs at the time. At the time, dogs were going for like $1,000 to $1,500 a piece. I mean, now it's skyrocketed. I've seen dogs that go for $10,000, $20,000 for a puppy. But back then, $1,500, $2,500 was a good price for a dog. So before I got into like what kind of dog I was gonna get, I did a lot of research on the bloodlines. I guess this is just really inherent in how I start to see things. Like I do a lot of research before I get into it. So I figured out what bloodlines I was going to deal with, how much those bloodlines were going to cost, which made the most money, which people are willing to pay. And then I went and I purchased my first stud, prize stud dog. Shouts out to, may he rest in peace, Bumpy Johnson, that I got from California. So I had this dog, flew in from California to Tallahassee. Actually, it was to Jacksonville. I had to drive to Jacksonville to go get the dog, bring him to Tallahassee. I looked in that crate and I was like, I don't see what the big deal was at the time. But he ended up being like one of the champion stud dogs. I mean, I was at that point in time, I started getting, flown to different competitions just to show up. And I'm like, this is incredible. And then I started really studying the dog guys, the dog men who came before me. Shouts out to Dave Wilson, who was the creator of the Razor's Edge bloodline. He's went on to bigger and better things. He actually runs the ABKC conventions, and that's his kennel club. We had the UKC, which was a big kennel club. I don't want to get into the weeds. So I really got into the dog game. I started studying biology because of the dog game and how to breed dogs. Found a great doctor. It was just I started putting all these things together. So I say it was a makeshift business, but even back then, I would really do a lot of research and due diligence on anything I was going to get into. Once again, I was passionate about dogs. I figured out how to make money off of them.
All right. So I'm really loving this. And I think this is like really good because when it comes down to it, it's like, people just start businesses all over the place and they really don't have no business. Honestly, they ain't got no business.
Nope. They ain't got no business. They ain't got no business starting no business.
They ain't got no business starting business because they're not running a business.
Right.
But here's two different takeaways that I just got from what you were just saying. One of them was you started off with research, so knowledge, developing a knowledge base, trying to figure out exactly what you're going to get into, how you're going to get into it, and how it works out for you. I think all those things are really, really important because even still at that point in time, it sounded like you didn't really know everything. You just knew enough to feel like now's the time for me to take the opportunity. The second part that you introduced was that you made the purchase. You made the commitment. Your commitment was exemplified through your purchase. Your purchase power is your commitment. So if we're not ready to actually get out there and spend the money, then we're not really ready to even start a business.
Let's stop there. Let's really take a look at that. One of the top reasons that people go out of business or businesses go out of business is because of lack of the right amount of capital. I just had a conversation with someone the other day who wanted to start a business. And I said, well, how much money do you have? And what happens is that, oh, well, I don't have that much, but all I got to do is, so we come up, which I'm not here to deter anyone. However, we come up with this ideal, and then we put together the perfect conditions that this, and and it's almost like, Dr. Strange, when he said there's only one way that this is gonna work. You know what I mean? When they go up against Thanos, we actually do that. A lot of people actually start businesses that way. Like we run through this one perfect scenario. We don't take into consideration the conditions. We don't take in consideration what we have going on, family, friend, whatever. We got this one condition, and one of the big conditions we need is you need to have a good amount of capital. And whatever you think you have, you probably need to have more than what it is. Let's stop listening to a lot of these one-off stories that say, oh, I started with nothing and I made it to this. There was a lot of intangibles that went along with that. And once again, it's only one out of millions of stories. So yeah, so that definitely had the capital. And people were looking at me crazy though when I spent that $1,500 on that dog. Because at the time, people were talking about, $100 and $200 dog. I want to talk about the first part of it was really thinking about the demographic, right? When I purchased that dog at $1,500, I had to look at the demographic of people who would purchase dogs at that amount. I didn't want to purchase dogs under $500 because you know what people do when they purchase dogs under $500? It's nothing for them to take it to the pound. It's nothing for them to bring the dog back. It's nothing for the dog to get sick and you don't want to pay the vet bills. So I started at a certain price point because I knew the people who would pay that amount, invest that much amount for a dog, more than likely they're going to make sure that dog is taken care of. And I'm not getting these, all kinds of things. These dogs coming back because dogs do come back at times. And nobody, it's tough to take back in a 6-month dog that hasn't been trained or worked with.
That's beautiful. So you actually, when you looked at the demographics in your initial research, you actually researched up. So you decided, hey, listen, I'm not going to just be like selling dogs on the side of the street with a sign that says, Rottweiler puppies for $350, and just whoever comes. You actually were looking for individuals that would be willing to pay whatever that price was, and that would have the capital to be able to not only afford them, but to care for them and to keep those dogs, so that you knew that you had, you were entering into a whole nother, as you stated, demographics. That's noteworthy. Like, people should be taking notes on that right there, because many times what ends up happening is that when people start businesses, they always work downwards. They identify downwards. So if the level of identity was from 1 to 10, and you classify some rich person as a 10 and some poor person as a 1, and then maybe an individual will say, well, I'm not poor, but I'm not rich, so I'm a 5, then the type of people that they would generally want to work with are 1s to 4s, because those people they have influence over. But those people may not have the mindset that individual has. So when it comes down to the actual sale, they end up with a whole lot of work, because they have to build the mindset in the individual for the business purpose. And then they still stand the chance of that business not working out, because these people are going to be doing returns and all these other types of things. So that's genius what you're saying that you are doing.
Yeah. And here, and it's across all businesses, like you mentioned, brother. When you start to deal, and it happens in the real estate. In real estate, the first you jump out, I want to work with first-time home buyers. I want to deal with people who need, possibly need work on their credit or something. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, or even though it's not rewarding. Helping first-time home buyers is a very rewarding job. However, if you have bills to pay, you're just starting your business, it's best for you to get in the best position possible, and that starts with the demographic you choose. You choose a demographic that's going to be able to pay you, and you also can give them the experience they want. So I bought my first dog for $1,500. What I ended up doing was selling dogs for $2,500, right? Around $2,500 for most of my dogs, and then they were like $1,500 for the dogs that kind of the smaller dogs, the dogs that weren't as desirable. And so what happens is that when you're doing that, you can also give a great customer experience when you're charging more. So if someone's charging $500 for a dog, he might have the same dog I have. Let's say he had the same dog. He just decided, I don't want to charge. I'm scared to charge. That's normally what it is. Or I don't understand what my worth is. So I'm going to charge $500 because that's where it should be. And I'm charging $2,500 for a dog, right? When you get my dog, I might add food. I'm going to add probably a couple of training sessions. The dog probably had a whole better nutritional coming up because I was able to afford it. That $500 guy might be making $100 or $200 of profit after he weans the dog, et cetera, et cetera. But his experience doesn't match my experience. So the perception of my dog, even though it might have been this, quote unquote, the same dog, the perception of it is going to be Mike has better dogs, just based on the experience I'm afforded to give the person. Not only that, but the marketing. Now I can also spend more money on marketing my dog. So now I'm getting more views. I'm getting more people seeing the product. I don't want to get into talk all about dogs, but this is what was actually going on back then. My website looked better than the guy who sold his dog for $500, if he even had a website. I had more eyes on it. The internet, the internet was out. We didn't have Facebook and all that. We had like message boards. I could be on the message boards better. I can afford a really dope camera, right? Because I'm shipping dogs everywhere. So although your dog looks like my dog, on the internet, my dog looks 10 times better than your dog because I got a $1,000 camera. I got a $1,000 camera. My dog is eating better food, so his fur tends to look 10 times better. Nutritional health is better. I'm offering this along with it. So it's like the perception of the value of the dog, which is really what people buy on, this perception, is 10 times better. And I've been around where people just sold dogs locally for the $500, and they had nicer dogs than what I saw was going for at the premium price. However, it was the perception of it, So you get a chance to do all that when you charge a more. You're not really competing on price. You're competing on value.
I'm taking a lot away from this, y'all. I'm sorry, everybody in the audience. We're gonna end up cutting this thing short because there's a lot to dig into this whole conversation. It's not going to fill up this episode, but right there's another great point that was in the middle of that, as far as people buy off perception. This is huge because it's true. I mean, this is the way of the world. Perception is perception is 9/10 of the law, right? If you get caught with a bag of weed by the police officers and it's in your possession, then they believe that is yours. Even if you say it's not, you're possessing it. The perception means that it is yours. It's in your car. You got pulled over. There's nobody else there. It is yours. Whether your friend dropped it when they got out of the vehicle. I mean, weed's probably not the greatest of examples right now because it's legalized in so many areas. But I think that you all get my drift when I'm coming from there. My whole point is this. People buy off perception. When somebody goes, because I work with a bunch of firefighters. When they go and they purchase a dog, just talking about dogs, or we can talk about cars, or we can talk about a suit. But when they go and they're like, man, this was how much you pay for the dog? $2,000. What? Man, what did that dog come with? But like, listen, bro, you should have seen the website when I got there. The dog had his own he was not in a crate. He was in the bed. He had his own room. They gave me the documentation of all the food that they've been eating for the last year. He's a pedigree. They gave me the certificate. Obviously, the guy knew what was going on because he already had him trained. When he told the dog to sit, the dog sat. When he told the dog to stand, the dog stood. And then I got a chance to see his mother and his father, and they're all pedigreed, and they were being taken care of. And then on top of it, the dude shipped the dog out to me personally, or he sent somebody in a carrier, and they brought him in a vehicle, and he was well trained and well taken care of. His coat was like silk. And so it's like all of these things are so important in hitting that higher level demographic
because that's what they want. And there are definitely people that could be, if you go back to my scale, the 1s to 4s that would like to purchase like the 5s to 10s, you know, or like the 6 to 10s. And they're going to come out there, but they want that. They want you to give them the bottle of water when you're sitting there hanging out with them, or a cup of coffee, because all of that interaction makes a huge difference. And that's like not part of the thing that people are even thinking about when they're selling. They're just like, I'm just going to have some pups and put the sign out on the side of the road and people are going to knock on my door. This is a huge mindset that we're talking about, and a difference, because we're supplying the need of the perception of the individual who wants to purchase, so that they know, they feel as if they were taken care of, they had the best experience ever. And really, that's the key word, is experience. Experience. They're paying for the experience, and now they've gotten something based off of the experience that they'll never forget. So where did that mindset that you just described so eloquently, where did that mindset come from? Because I think that if somebody were listening to this and they could develop that type of mindset, which is really the mindset that separates the greats from the novice, where did you develop that mindset?
That's an interesting question. Now we would have to dig in the crates. I guess you know, and what we're talking about is selling the sizzle. I remember a car guy who's one of my mentors from way back in the day, used to say when he was selling cars, he said, man, I sold them the sizzle. You know what I mean? I wasn't selling, I figured I wasn't selling the steak, I was selling the sizzle. But I think it came from just being around a lot of people with a certain kind of bravado. I was around other, you know, what we could call entrepreneurs, but they had a lot of bravado. There was a lot of sizzle selling, so to speak. You know, there was certain tricks to certain trades, and I was like, well, we can just take this and kind of just move it over. I also realized at young, like the type of customers I wanted to deal with. Certain customers are just stuck on price. You know what I mean? And not to say I haven't worked with anyone who hasn't been stuck on price, but I'm working with them, and it's a lesson being told. That's why I always talk about this demographic that I'm working with. And you hear, oh, well, you know, because certain demographics are easier to bring in, but there's more sorting that you got to deal with. But to answer your question, I think it was just being around a certain kind of bravado. That are, you know, other people who are selling certain things that they definitely, you know, were able to get a higher price just based on the presentation, if that makes sense.
Man, I love it. I think that's really good. You know, we're talking about like the qualified, I suppose, maybe for lack of better terms. It's like, you know, the price. Those that are concerned about the price versus those that have met the qualifications to be able to afford, you know, without any pains or hurt to themselves. Because there's those people that they can quote unquote afford something, but they got to put it on their credit card, or they got to not pay something. And I don't really call that being able to afford, but I know the mindset of people who believe they can't afford something that they can't afford. They believe they can't afford it. So that's why I'm saying it that way. You know, you know, it's like, I got $10,000 in my bank account. Yo, what are you going to do with that? Well, I'm going to go buy me a $15,000 car because I can afford it. You know what I mean? It's like, I guess, you know, I mean, yeah.
I just saw a guy. I just saw it, and I posted it, and I think people missed it because I didn't crop it out correctly. Lionel Messi just bought a house in Miami for, I think it was $10.5 million. Lionel Messi can afford a $10.5 million house. This is a guy who has the skills and the ability and the probably opportunities to be $1 billion guy. Like he can generate hundreds of millions of dollars of income. Lionel Messi can. He's the best soccer player, you know, quote unquote, in the world right now. one of the probably top 3, right? I saw a guy who won the lotto. He just won the lotto for $2 billion. I think so. After taxes, he probably took home a little less than $1 billion, right? He went out and he bought a $40 million house. He's actually spent $80 million in real estate. So he made over 100. He made, he won the lotto a bit. He probably took home a little less than $1 billion, and then he went out and bought a $40 million house. I think that's his primary residence, and then $80 million across real estate. What's interesting to me is that the guy who has the ability to actually purchase a $40 million house, Lionel Messi, bought a $10.5 million house, living below his so-called means, essentially, because he's able to make that amount of income. And on the other hand, you got a guy who probably can't make, let's say he can make $500,000. He's not $1 million guy, this lotto guy, but you're buying a $40 million house. So just to the point, like, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should actually purchase it. Just because you have the money, even in the car situation, if you got $15,000 in the bank account and you go buy a $20,000 car, even if you put $15,000 down, you still got $5,000 worth of payments that you need to make. Do you have the income sufficient in order to make that? Real quick financial lit class. Love to hear your answers on that.
Yeah, man. Let me see. Are you able to hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, so I just wanted to look that up real quick, and it was like, for the club that brought Messi over, is like $33 million is what they paid him. $75 million was the contract for 4 years. I think it was starting in 2020. So 4 years, that's going into 2024. He'll be worth more. Obviously, he's won every game that he's played in, from as far as I know. And then there was and then I started to look a little more into Apple, and Apple was reported to have paid him $50 to $60 million for certain services. And I didn't even get a chance to get into all the other stuff because his shirts are up at the Hard Rock, and it says Hard Rock. It says Hard Rock Casino and Messi. So that means that there's some type of engagement agreement. So I'm sure he's getting paid, tens of millions of dollars for that. I mean, Lionel Messi may be making, $200 to $300 million a year right now. So that's just interesting, because really, for him to buy a $10 million house is like a drop in the bucket, right? That's what that is. That's not even a month's worth of pay for somebody who's making, $200, $300 million. At any rate, I mean, I suppose it may be a month's worth of pay, but that's it, and it's over with. He's done. It's paid for. So I think that's really, really important, man. I absolutely love this. I do want to bring up one more thing, but I think we ought to save it for the next episode. Because there's this thing with Alex Hormozi and his whole story about becoming a $100 million earner, and like how much money he actually had in his bank account when that day happened. So listen, y'all. That's it. That's a great book. That's the first one, right?
The second one.
So I have to read that one. I read the first one. That's the second one. Alex Hormozi is an absolute genius when it comes down to business, and he's figured out the key of duplication, like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Actually, Arnold Schwarzenegger is probably like the predecessor. I mean, I don't know of anyone else who's figured out the art of duplication in business and has been globally recorded to have done such things, like become the number one, is what I mean by that, in multiple fields without those fields actually overlapping each other. I mean, we're talking about extremely different fields. He became number one. So I love that. Let's bring it up on the next episode. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. Brother, do you have any other comments that you want to throw out?
I'm excited. This was definitely maybe too much information, guys. You tell me, but that's what you're gonna get. You got lots of information. So yeah, appreciate this. This was a dope episode. So definitely we'll see you on the next one.
All right, guys. Peace. That was dope.